everybody. Thank you so much for joining Status Coup. Today, we are going to be talking to organizer and activist Riley Hott. She is a student recruitment lead with Climate Defiance, and Climate Defiance just held a sit-in in Washington, D.C. last weekend, and Kaylee's here to tell us all about it. We're also going to be talking about the Willow Project, as well as the newest UN report. Kaylee is an Appalachian. It's one of the things that brought her into activism and organizing for climate change. So we'll be talking about that as well. Kaylee, can you tell me a little bit about about what Climate Defiance is and what this weekend's event was, or last weekend's event was all about?
Yes, so my name is Riley, and I'm student recruitment lead at Climate Defiance. We are a youth-led new organization focused on using mass direct action to resist fossil fuel extraction. Specifically, right now, we are focusing on ending extraction on federal lands, which is something that President Biden promised to do during his campaign and has failed to deliver on. He just signed on to the Willow Project, but he's also signed over 200 more oil and gas leases on federal lands than Trump had at this point in his presidency. And so we disrupted a CSIS event hosted by Ali Zaidi, which is the top White House climate advisor, this past Monday, and ended up disrupting it to the point where he did not give his speech. We wanted to speak to the communities that are being most affected by these new oil and gas drilling projects and call attention to the fact that Biden has not kept his promises. And no matter how many hearings they have on climate change and energy security, they aren't acting in good faith on his climate, the things that he ran on for climate change.
So Rayleigh, you guys basically did a sit-in. How long were you guys sitting in for again?
We were sitting in, occupying the stage for about 20 minutes. We were chanting, "Keep your promises, no new drilling," and wanted Ali, who is essentially the voice for the Biden administration's climate work, to take this message back to Biden that young people are livid and we demand a living, sustainable future for our generation and the generations after us. So yeah, we were there for about 20 minutes.
Awesome. Let's take a listen to a short video that Climate Defiance had posted after the event, and then we'll dig a little bit more into it.
Right in. You did it. Hi, friends.
Keep your promise, no new drilling. Keep your promise, no new drilling. Keep your promise, no new drilling. Keep your promise.
Really grateful for you showing up. Really grateful for your voice, for your message, for you being here.
The IPCC doesn't say to drill a little bit, it says extraction has to stop. The IPCC and the science, I'm a physician, the science is very, very clear.
Yeah.
Drilling has to stop, and all the green lighting of drilling on federal lands is more than Trump.
Yeah.
President Biden lied to us. He lied to our faces. He said he would end extraction on federal lands, and he has not done that. He has expanded it.
Exactly.
New
And
permits.
we want him to keep his promise. No.
Rayleigh, was that you talking about him lying, about Biden lying to everybody?
That was actually not me. I ended up speaking to Ali a bit about being a West Virginian and what that means in the climate justice field for me and why I was there. But yeah, she did an incredible job of holding him accountable. I mostly just shared my personal story.
What does it mean to you, being a West Virginian, the impacts of climate change? I know that there's the Mountain Valley Pipeline, for instance. I'm Kentuckian, so was running through both of our states, and is something that a lot of climate activists have been pushing back against for the last, 12 years. But there's also the boom and bust of the coal industry, mountaintop removal. What are some of the things that have impacted you that brought you into doing this kind of activism as a West Virginian and as someone who has seen the impacts firsthand?
Yeah, so I'm actually from Parkersburg, West Virginia, and in my community, we are home to DuPont, which was dumping C8 into the Ohio River for decades. They may still be doing so. However, yeah, that's kind of what got me started in the climate justice movement specifically, realizing that there are extremely high rates of cancer and birth defects in the surrounding area in the Ohio River Valley. And then specifically what started me organizing in climate justice was last year there was a coal baron blockade at the Granttown power plant.
Oh,
And
yeah.
yeah, this is a coal plant where Senator Manchin, who also sits as the chair of the Energy and Natural Resources Committee, makes about $500,000 a year from the trucking company that ships coal waste to this plant, which is one of the dirtiest plants on the East Coast and is still burning the dirtiest type of coal that you can burn, which is coal gob. So I was,
What is
very
coal gob? I've heard of it before.
Coal gob. So it's essentially like, I guess the best description is coal, but imagine it's all the coal that the other places didn't want to burn. So it's kind of like how you picture McDonald's chicken nugget compared to like a chicken breast. Coal gob is like the McDonald's chicken nugget of coal, basically.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
And it because it's a secondary. It's like it's the waste of the waste. So
Mhm.
what you're getting is coal ash and burn and slurry sludge. That's the massive ponds that a lot of West Virginia and Kentucky has that holds everything that comes off from the plants. It becomes more polluted because it's the most dense form of those pollutants that can be out there. What have you seen happen to the West Virginian economy over time? Also, because of this boom and bust cycle, the coal company coming in and going out. I know in our pre-interview you talked about how people still had their friends of coal stickers. Oh yeah, they're all people around here have them too. The friends of coal stickers still on their cars. They still have hope that jobs will come to the area. But what are you seeing?
Yeah, so I mean, coal towns are pretty desolate, sad right now. Like, I helped canvass, knocked thousands of doors last year for the Freedom to Vote Act, and I went to so many places in West Virginia, and I particularly remember speaking to a lady named Betty in Marmet, which is just a little bit south of Charleston, and is incredibly affected by coal, the coal trains that go by and the plants nearby. And I just remember knocking on tons of doors that day where it was completely empty. And then I would knock another door and somebody would say, "Oh yeah, they died last year of cancer." I heard, "Oh, I'm sorry, my neighbor died of cancer," like 5 to 10 times that day alone. And then I remember speaking to this lady named Betty. She was relatively young. I was shocked because I thought she was in her 80s, and she told me she was about 50 something, and she was on a ventilator. She didn't have very good transportation. She told me about how she'd been removed from the voter rolls, even though she voted every single year. And I just particularly remember her asking me to take a good look at her porch and tell me if I think that our representatives care about us. And I remember she had a white painted porch, and it wasn't until she told me that I looked at her porch and it was gray, and I just saw like the soot and coal laying all over her porch, and thinking about the health impacts that she has lived with because she lived right next to the railroad, and how upset I was for her and how angry she was. And I will carry Betty with me in all my organizing experiences going forward. But that was just one person. And I think about Betty a lot and how many Bettys there are in Appalachia, who are left behind, who, yeah, may not even have the accessibility to go vote and to share with their representatives that they're not happy with the state of things in Appalachia.
Many of the seats, even I've been doing research recently on a lot of these quote unquote red states, or what people call red states. And I found that in places like Kentucky, West Virginia was one of them. anywhere from 40 to 60% of the House seats and local seats go completely unchallenged. So there's not even a choice on the ballot for who to vote for. I mean, people get grandfathered in, or, it's one person that has the ability and the privilege to run, and so they do. So a lot of these people don't have recourse at the ballot box because they oftentimes don't even have any seats that are contested. So there's no choice there for them.
Yeah, and I think that's a big reason that Manchin has continued to hold power in West Virginia for so long. Because, yeah, just like you said, a lot of people aren't willing to run against folks who are that well established because they don't think they have any chance. And then in the lower ballot races, it seems like there are tons of people who are running without any kind of opposition. And I also know that in a lot of very red areas in West Virginia, people will run as a Republican because they feel they have no other political option. And it's basically like you're trying to vote for the less harmful Republican in that seat. And it may very well be somebody who identifies as a Democrat, but they're never going to tell you that so that they can end up getting elected. So yeah, it's a very complex situation, but I think it's important to hear from Appalachians because the story that's told about West Virginia and the story of living there and breathing the same air as these folks, it's a lot different, I think.
Our stories are rarely told. I remember that there was a small glimpse of it, Harlan and Hazard, when we had the massive flooding in Kentucky last year. Several tens of thousands of people displaced, more than 100 people died. And that was not only because of climate change, but because of massive mountaintop removal there. There's been floods like that in West Virginia as well. All that whole area, there may be a border there, but they're both coal communities and they're sister communities. And across that whole region, the boom and bust, the pollution, and now with the pipelines, we see the potential that it's going to be carrying and fracking, that the same thing are going to be happening. I know in our pre-interview, you talked about being worried about the people of Alaska. Once these pipelines go in, and then the company comes in and what were you describing there? If you want to talk about that again.
Yeah, so essentially what I was talking about was the fact that a lot of times the pro and the positive side that these communities see is new job opportunities and economic growth for their area. And that's the same thing that was said to West Virginians before the coal boom. It's a recurring theme. I like to say it was timber, then it was coal, and now it's chemicals and opioids. But essentially these corporations come in and they extract what they can, they take our resources, and they promise all these amazing jobs and opportunities, but oftentimes they're bringing in people from out of state. And then the people who are living in the state, once they're done doing what they are doing, leave them high and dry and just dip out and take all that wealth for themselves. And you can see that in West Virginia right now. You can't ever tell that there was a massive industry boom in West Virginia. You see tattered buildings, so many more homeless people, young people are moving out in massive rates, including myself, even though I didn't want to have to do that. But I felt like there was no other choice for my future other than moving somewhere else that at least respects me as a woman, as an LGBTQ person. It's really sad. And I really hope that the people of Alaska, if this continues to go through, at least get to reap some of the benefits, because what I've seen in West Virginia is that it doesn't usually happen like that.
Right. There is definitely a boom and bust. You wouldn't know. And then people are just left with the mess. The local communities are left with the mess, the environmental impacts, and the impacts on their health. Just like we're seeing in East Palestine right now, these companies don't care. They'll pack up, they'll leave, they'll half-ass clean up if they even do that. And they're more worried about our politicians, as you had mentioned, the CSIS, the Center for Strategic International Studies. I know you mentioned that they took tens of millions of dollars from coal and oil and gas companies. So you were there, protesting at literally a place that does propaganda for oil and gas companies, with a Biden administration representative who is supposed to be the stopgap and the checks and balances. They're speaking. So it's really brave of you guys to come out to do the sit-in for 20 minutes, which is awesome. We don't see a lot of that. We see a lot of like rallies and stuff, but I love the disruptive nature of your all's protest. Can you tell me what else do you guys have coming up in the near future? How can people get involved if they have these concerns and they would like to get involved with climate defiance?
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for mentioning that, there are many different types of action, but we feel personally that unless you're being disruptive, it's not going to be as effective as you want it to be. And I actually got involved in organizing in general by attending some of these marches. But the real work didn't start happening until I was able to recognize I needed to disrupt things and interrupt the status quo, or else it gets lost as far as the messaging and the power of our messaging goes. So we are demanding that Biden end fossil fuel extraction on public lands. That's something that he promised that he would do in his campaign and has failed to deliver on. So we are bringing this message to him directly at the White House Correspondents' Dinner on April 29th and shutting it down. And we hope to see about 1,000 people in attendance, fingers crossed. So you can help us do that by going to climatedefiance.org. That is Climate Defiance, DEFIANCE.org, and signing up to join us on April 29th and for future actions, because we need to disrupt business as usual if we're actually going to hit the goals of keeping us from 1.5 degrees warming any day now, sooner rather than later. The fight doesn't give up. Every increment of climate change that we can fight against is worth fighting against. And so, yeah, I hope to see as many people there on April 29th as possible.
Thank you so much, Riley. And thank you so much for joining us and all the work that you guys are doing. And please keep in contact with me, because I would love to hear about your event. And we are always doing on the ground journalism. So we may be able to have someone come down, potentially. I'm not sure, but we sometimes do have folks in DC. So just let us know, and really, really appreciate you taking the time to come and talk about Appalachia, as well as what Climate Defiance is doing to help bring awareness to the impacts of climate change and the environmental impacts of corporate pollution.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.